Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. A lot of the bashing of early Image that I do is focused on Rob Liefeld because, well, look at any of his work. But I haven't actually covered that much in terms of Image's first books. Sure, a handful of titles from throughout the 90s, but recall that Image was founded with a group of creators who each made their own title for their own individual studios. In that regard, I've covered Youngblood and Spawn. That's pretty much it for firsts, and even then, I only covered Spawn's first issue because of his significance in pop culture outside of comics. While I've covered a lot of other early Image stuff, it's usually at least a year or two into its life. Savage Dragon was the third Image book to appear after Youngblood and Spawn, and it's actually got kind of an interesting publishing history. Created by Erik Larsen, the comic we're reviewing is technically not his first appearance. He created the dragon as a kid, along with a handful of other characters, and over the years changed his origin story around while keeping the same general look. He was an alien, then he was a DC's Captain Marvel-esque hero who traded places with another person, etc. He even submitted a story with the character to Charlton Bullseye, that new creator showcase book I talked about back in the Blue Beetle retrospective. But the book was cancelled and his story had to be rejected, though he was encouraged to send it off to other publishers because it seemed like there was potential. Eventually, he and a few other creators put together a fanzine called Graphic Fantasy that featured the character for 2 issues. This got the attention of Gary Carlson, a fanzine collector who started up his own anthology series called Megaton in the 80s, where Larsen got his first professional work, even putting some Savage Dragon stories in there, though again with a different backstory. And thus, once Image started and he finally found a place where he could publish the character in his own book, once more he was revised, cherry-picking ideas he had had over the years, and assembling something new that people could latch onto without the baggage of the previous printed appearances. Which basically goes to show for young creators out there, never throw ideas away, because they might come in handy down the line. Like, say, that terrifying video game glitch you saw as a child, and making it into a villain for your comic book internet show. Just an idea. I am sorry to say that I am not reviewing the original printed comic. It was my intention to do so, to analyze how it came across when it was first published, but unfortunately it turns out I don't have a physical copy. I could have sworn I had one, but no dice. And unfortunately, Comixology does not have the original issue for sale, just 2 trade paperbacks with it, one a black and white archive that was clearly sourced from this version, a trade paperback that collects the original Savage Dragon miniseries that led into the ongoing that is still going on today, and Erik Larsen is still writing and drawing it after all these years. It is actually possible that the book may be the longest running that hasn't changed out its writer and artist. And this is in addition to his other duties at Image, so major kudos there. Anyway, my point about the trade is that in the original first issue, a flashback is interspersed throughout the issue to break up the action scenes. In the trade, Larsen decided to rework the page order and put the flashbacks in the beginning, add some pages to expand scenes, and help the story flow better. So yeah, unfortunately, the version I'm looking at here is not how the issue was originally presented, although I've got to imagine it's an improvement. I'm not totally against the idea of flashbacks in the middle of an action scene that happens later. After all, my favorite run of the Titans had the same framing device in their first issue, but it does have the problem of making a lot of things feel disjointed if it's handled poorly. Since I don't have the original issue, I can't tell you specifically where one bit originally fit, or if a page was added somewhere in there that didn't used to be there. Still, let's just dig into Savage Dragon #1 and see if it's any good regardless of how it was put together.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. Brodsky, you're not the smartest. Liefeld, you're not an artist. Anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your
Since I'm reading from a trade, not going to look at the cover in any detail other than to say it was okay, nothing to write home about. We open with a naked savage dragon laying in the middle of a literal field of fire, when 4th of July barbecues go wrong. Later, he's in a hospital bed talking to Lieutenant Frank Darling of the Chicago Police Department. To begin with, who are you? Ugh, okay, get this. Green Giant was doing a talent hunt for a new mascot and, well, he doesn't remember who he is. Do you know where you came from? No. This job interview isn't going very well. Frank continues like that, asking how he got to the burning field he was found in, if he remembers anything about his life, or why he's a big giant green guy with a fin on his head, but he still can't recall anything. However, he is able to remember details about the world, who the president is, names of actors and sporting events, that sort of thing. Anything about himself is a complete mystery. Frank tells his wife about all this while they eat dinner and watch TV. Docs don't know if he's a mutant or a spaceman. Space mutant. Physically, he's very nearly human, except for his green skin and that fin on his head. Spoilers, from what I read about in later issues, it turns out he was indeed an alien. New company, same old retcons. On the news, they hear that a local superhero named Super Patriot is in critical condition at the hospital, with both his arms and legs crushed and half his face missing. Don't worry, it's always in the last place you look! Oh god, I'm in so much pain! At the hospital, the nurse refers to him as Mr. Dragon because of his appearance, and he actually quite likes it, though he says he's decided to leave. Frank drops by, saying he's arranged for him to stay with his cousin Fred in a loft above a warehouse he owns. On the next page, I think we found our first victim of the swap to putting all the flashbacks at the beginning, because apparently there's been a bit of a time skip with no caption box saying if there was. Instead, it's just the dragon reading in the loft with Frank stopping by to ask him to come help the police fight crime. We're being slaughtered out there. The super freaks have stopped us at every turn. They're very kinky girls, the kind you don't take home to mother. Savage Dragon, though, can match any super criminals and mutants in terms of raw power. Unfortunately, he has to turn Frank down. Look, Frank, I thank you for getting me a job, and for your friendship, but I'm only one man. A man desperately trying to find himself. This is a weird remake of The Creature Walks Among Us. After Frank talks to his wife about how it sucks that the dragon won't come help them, while reiterating details we already knew, we see a couple of supervillains attacking the warehouse Fred owns, shaking him down for money. The two we see are this vampire-looking dude and a guy with a skull for a head, but with long, flowing hair. L'Oreal, because your skin fell off. The dragon is easily able to toss them around. What's wrong with you? You some kind of retard or something? Oh my god, guys! We found him! We found the guy who stole Batman's costume in All-Star Batman and Robin! You're a super freak like us! The kind of girl you read about in the New Wave magazines! Skullface insists that he could just take anything he wants and not work for a living. Thanks for the guidance counseling, Pinhead! It was at that moment that Skullface Guy discovered his true calling as a therapist. After the police haul the two away, Fred thinks his life is over. The criminals just wanted money from him, but the attack means that they'll be looking to kill him in retaliation over this. Savage Dragon insists he'll protect him, but on the very next page, he is once again naked and in the middle of a blazing inferno that was the warehouse. Why does he keep picking out the most flammable of clothes to wear? After seeing a news report about another superhero, Mighty Man, having been killed, Frank gets a knock at the door, and it is a very naked Savage Dragon. Evening, Frank. Little trouble down at the office. Bad guys threatened Fred, I broke their faces, and they had the place blown sky high. And what happened to your pants? Oh, that? I was just feeling really hot. The bad news is that your cousin's dead. Good news is, I'm ready to take you up on your offer. Oh my god. Are you okay? I can tell that Fred meant so much to the two of them. We get a brief character moment where Frank returns to bed and he's clearly shaken by this new information as he talks to his wife about it. Super freaks tried to extort money from Fred. The dragon kicked their butts, so they had Fred's warehouse blown sky high. He's dead, and we've got a green house guest sleeping on our couch. I feel like this is the setup for a sitcom. I snark, but honestly, this scene is pretty damn good, highlighting how vulnerable and shaken Frank is by all this. It's good stuff. Soon, Savage Dragon is at the police academy, wondering if this idea is even going to work. I find it hard to believe that a guy in my condition is going to be able to waltz right onto the police force. Surely, there are examinations to determine both moral and ethical background that I simply don't have knowledge of. Dragon, this is kind of a special circumstance. So morality and ethics are really not necessary. He talks about how, with everything gone to hell, superheroes maimed or killed, most heroes are employed by the government in operations like Youngblood, the Force just needs someone like him, and they're not going to turn him away because of his lack of background. The training goes well, easily stacking and holding up a bunch of other recruits, shooting 6 bullets into the same hole, although not wearing the standard safety equipment for the noise caused by the gun, though Dragon does snap at Frank over his lack of memory. And thus he's admitted onto the Force, Frank saying that he'll act as a one-man SWAT team against supercriminals. Look at him! Man, I wish my Finn was that impressive! He's introduced to several people, and they're all jovial. Except for one, Officer Howard Niceman. Working with freaks. What's next, for Christ's sake? Aw, he truly lives up to his name as Nice Man. You'll have to excuse Howard. He's a bit testy after nearly getting his butt kicked out of here for severely beating an innocent black man. Clearly someone with as gentle a soul as the Fixer from Holy Terror. Frank wants to move on with the introductions, but Niceman comments that he'll have words with him later. However, later comes right on the next page. Could be a break in the flashback like before, could be the same scene, hard to say. Listen up, freak. I don't like your kind. Trying to take over our country, push us real Americans around. Bad enough that I gotta work with them. Okay, wow. Gonna stop it right there. He tries to tell Savage Dragon to stay out of his way or there'll be trouble. And Savage Dragon responds by crushing his balls. Like, not even kidding. There's a crush sound effect. He then proceeds to give a speech to the guy about how racists like him are turning people against the police and eroding public trust. It feels out of place and preachy, and yet at the same time so wonderfully accurate as he just lectures a dude who's going into a fetal position thanks to his dick getting compressed. Your prejudice and intolerance is hurting all of us. We're losing the public's trust. Stereotypes are where you find them. Because of men like you, cops are being stereotyped as bad guys, as unreasonable, irrational, narrow-minded bigots. We need to break down the racial barriers, end racism through education, and reaffirm what we're here for, to serve and protect the people you're alienating. This isn't about getting to beat up innocent citizens because you don't like the way they look. We're supposed to be the good guys. Start acting like it. Somewhere, Joe Friday is crying tears of joy, and he doesn't know why. Later, the Dragon is dispatched to deal with some supercriminals robbing a bank. One is Cutthroat, who was in my review of Bad Rock number 1A from last year. Turns out he and Razor Fist started out in Savage Dragon. He and his girlfriend, Glowbug, have already killed several civilians and cops, and Savage Dragon is the only one who can stop them. Also, the guy explaining this to the Dragon evidently thinks he's Spider-Man. And thus we get the title of the issue, and presumably where the comic actually started in the original version, Baptism of Fire. Man, some denominations are hardcore with their rituals. Despite attacking from the back, apparently Cutthroat was able to turn around and slash the Dragon's chest before he got punched. Although that makes me wonder if Dragon was just gonna punch the back of his head in the previous panel, since it looked more like he was just gonna grab him. A monster! Cops sent a damn monster to get me! You have a giant blade for an arm! The Dragon is easily able to toss the two aside, much to the pained ramblings of Cutthroat. You didn't hurt me. I can still beat you. I can beat all 3 of you. Give me one good reason why I should let you take me in. Because I say so. Just look at how shiny my teeth are. And thus he takes the two into custody, to the applause of everyone gathered outside the scene. After another super criminal, with weird clown hair, gets beaten down, we learn from a news report that Savage Dragon has taken in more supervillains in a single day than the rest of the force managed to get all year. Unfortunately, it looks like it's whittled his poor legs down to twigs. I also fear that he's taken too many blows to the head, because while one guy he's carrying appears to be Lobo, the other guy he's hauling in is clearly Captain Marvel! The news interviews several of the cops we had met before, including Niceman again. "We didn't have him before, and we don't need him now." He means his testicles. There's also a person on the street who just openly uses the N-word in reference to other people they want Savage Dragon to deal with. Just wow. I don't think that'll make it to air. After a montage of more criminals that he takes care of, he's brought into a suburban home where about 20 guys are holding hostages and shooting out at the cops. Dragon arms himself with massive guns that still look closer to what real guns look like than anything else in this early shared image universe, and prepares to go in. Instead of trying to go in through the front door, he leaps into the air and falls face down at the roof. This is gonna be really awkward if he lands on a hostage. He crashes through the roof and... wait, he was falling face first on the 2 previous pages, but once he's actually through, it's feet first. How did he flip over like that?
Space is warped and time is bendable.
And thus Savage Dragon solves his problems the 90s way, shooting lots of guns.
Dude! Savage Dragon is the best Image character ever because he uses guns!
That's like most of them in these early Image books.
Which is why they're all the coolest!
Like, was this necessary? Did we need, like, 3 pages of shooting sound effects taking up so much of the thing? Why is he even wearing the bandolier? Do any of these guns even take those bullets? It's not like they're being fed into the guns either. He has to load those one at a time. And oh no, one of the bullets takes out his shades!
Those were $500 sunglasses, asshole.
One guy holds a woman hostage with a gun to her head, but before Savage Dragon can take him down, a superhero comes in from a window to disable his hand with comparably smaller bullets. Nice shooting, Finhead. 23 down and wounded. 0 dead. Bullcrap, nobody died! With how many bullets went out, some of which really seem to have gone into people or severed limbs, I'm surprised anyone was alive to surrender! The guy says his name is Star, and he's just another concerned citizen hoping to help out. The dragon lets him go, though he glares while standing in the middle of this room full of bleeding people and broken roof and dirt. I don't think these guys are gonna get the deposit back on the house. Later, at the police station, dozens of reporters want to talk to Savage Dragon, revealing that this was all just his first day on the job! You just know the rest of the week is going to be him sitting at his tiny desk and filling out paperwork. And so our comic ends with a bunch of supervillains, including Hellraiser and presumably Overlord, again last seen in the Bad Rock review, discussing what to do about Savage Dragon. "Do as you please, Hellraiser. His feeble attempts to restore order are of little concern to me. I have more important things to do, like stare out at the city menacingly." This comic is actually okay for the most part. You know, it's funny in hindsight that Youngblood was the first comic produced by Image, given Rob's chronic lateness. Really, this should have been their flagship book. While it's still bogged down by plenty of 90s conventions and several points where the artwork is pretty yeesh, we have a likable protagonist, a storytelling engine and mystery with his amnesia, and most important of all, believable, legitimate character moments. Frank's breakdown to his wife about how out of control everything's gotten is very human and was a nice touch. I don't know how much of this played out in the original published version, but it was good to put the flashbacks at the beginning. While the action scenes were bleh, it felt like a proper build-up to them by being introduced to the dragon first, and then seeing him in action kicking ass. It's not perfect, of course. The dragon getting into a big speech about racism out of nowhere feels a bit ham-fisted, and the casual slurs are uncomfortable and unnecessary, even coming from assholes and villains. But overall, for a first issue, not bad. Next time, back to Patreon-sponsored reviews as we highlight some Disney superhero action with The Duck Knight's Return.
I'm sitting on
Wait, is that dude just a shark with cybernetic enhancements? Did Savage Dragon bring back brute force? Oh, and I never noticed this before. Hellraiser actually has a zipper on his crotch, presumably so he can easily go to the bathroom. This dude has the most practical design element in this thing.